When I think about my values as a marketer, I really believe in the power of creativity. I'm not just talking about creating wonderful creative, which is really important, but how are you applying creativity to every aspect of your job? I think of creativity as that pixie dust that makes everything fly and gives you exponential return on your investment.
Welcome to Building Better CMOs, a podcast about how marketers can get stronger and smarter. I'm Greg Stewart, the CEO of the nonprofit MMA Global. And that voice you heard at the top, that's Dara Treseder. She's the Chief Marketing Officer at Autodesk. And as you're going to hear, she's a veteran CMO with past marketing leadership roles at Peloton, GE, Apple, and more. She's also on the board of the Public Health Institute and Robinhood, and she's on the global board here at the MMA. Now, today on Building Better CMOs, Dara and I are going to talk about trusting your instincts, the importance of having a coach, the critical importance of having a coach, in fact, applying creativity to every aspect of your job, and so much more. This podcast is all about the challenges that marketers face and unlocking the true power that marketing can have. Dara Treseder from Autodesk is going to tell us how to do that right after this. Dara, so nice to have you on Building Better CMOs today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my goodness, you are excited too. The people here on audio can't see, but you just got the biggest of smiles and excitement, which is just so typical of what I expect from you. Is that like your secret weapon? Maybe that's how you win people over with a big giant smile and friendliness? It's got to be it.
I don't know, but I'm certainly an optimistic person. I'm an excited person. And, it's kind of funny, that Pixar movie Inside Out, and it's like, what's your default emotion? Mine is joy. So there you go.
Oh, there you go. I love it. I actually heard the greatest thing today because, of course, I get all my information from TikTok nowadays. And it was a guy saying, he goes, what's more important, positive thinking or reduction in negative thinking? I thought, wow, that's a very interesting question. He says, listen, the research is absolutely clear that getting rid of negative, be positive, sure, but getting rid of negative, the most important thing you can do. Isn't that interesting?
I believe that because I really think we are shaped by our thoughts. So the things we allow to sit in our heads, sit in our hearts, they start to shape who we are. So if you have got negative stuff in there, it starts to shape you. So I believe that. And I spend a lot of time really in meditation and positive affirmations to sort of try to reduce those negative thoughts that, we all have in our minds.
I love that. In fact, I had a friend of mine tell me, it's funny, we're starting Building Better CMOs, we're off on meditation. I had a friend of mine tell you spend, 20, 30 more minutes getting ready in the morning on the outside. Why don't you spend a little time getting the inside ready too?
I love that.
I've never forgotten that. Yeah, no, it's just a great thing. And I think he was totally right. And it's been about practice for me too. I totally agree. Now, listen, how long you been over? So maybe back a little business stuff here. So for people, we'll come back maybe some personal stuff later because I'd love to do that with you. But how long you been at Autodesk now?
Almost a year. It will be a year in about a few weeks. So, and what a ride it's been.
My goodness.
I'm so grateful to be here.
Yeah. And listen, you had a heck of a ride at Peloton before. I mean, that was probably one of the most interesting time in almost any company's history, the period you were there, correct? Don't you think?
It was hitting hills. With a little Tabata. So there we go.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. What do you think now? It's fun to be in the center of the action. You have to believe that to be true, just knowing you. But also too, it can be maybe a rough ride a little bit sometimes, right? With the ups and downs. When you're that public and when a slight event, maybe it wasn't a slight event, events come around and sort of, shift the whole world or your view of it or the company's view, it's got to be very, I don't know. How did you manage through some of that? Some of the change that was inherent in that company?
I really believe that when we are going through times of uncertainty, the amount of skill sets that we use to navigate that uncertainty, it's not that it was never there. We all have it in us, but it certainly gets honed. And so when I look back on that time, was it challenging? Absolutely. Was it exciting? Yes, in many ways. And, I'm really proud of the work that my team and I did while we were there. My belief, I've always said, I believe in a philosophy where there's a time to bloom where you're planted, and there's a time when you need to go to grow. And, I really enjoyed my time there, and I bloomed where I was planted. But there came a time, where I needed to go to grow. And, I think about the role that I'm in now. I absolutely love Autodesk. I'm working across so many different industries as opposed to one industry. And my portfolio of what I oversee is really exciting to me. I have a team in 55 countries. I'm also overseeing kind of our digital and e-commerce, which is a very exciting position to be in. So I'm absolutely loving where I am, and I'm grateful for the journey that led me here.
Yeah, no, it's great. And listen, like I said, I think a lot of people probably know you from your Peloton days, but you have a lot of B2B and tech experience under your belt.
Absolutely. It's kind of funny because before I went to my last job, everybody was like, "Oh, you're a B2B marketer. What are you doing going into consumer?" And when I was, coming here to Autodesk, everyone was like, "But you're such a great consumer marketer. This is what you do. What are you doing going to a B2B environment?" And my answer was, "I'm both." And really I'm business to human. At the end of the day, whether you're working in a B2B company or a B2C company, the key thing is delivering value for your customer, putting your customer at the center of it all, and being able to really deliver that value. And that's something that I'm obsessed with. It's something that's a deep philosophy of mine, something I'm so committed to. And it's been exciting to actually apply that in different contexts because you get better at it and you understand and you're able to kind of transfer that knowledge that you've gained from different contexts. So it's almost like a skill that you keep building. It's that muscle you keep developing. And so it's been really, I think, a wonderful opportunity that I've had to work as a CMO in different contexts.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. You've got an incredible history there. I think a lot of people know. But Dara, I think what's something that's very interesting about you is that you actually grew up in Nigeria
Yes.
and then moved to America at some point, right?
Yes. I came here to go to college. Absolutely. I was born and raised in Nigeria.
Wow. Until what age?
So I lived in Nigeria until I was about 16 when I went to boarding school in the UK. I think I was 15 and then turned 16. And then I did my A levels in the UK. And then I went to, Harvard for my undergrad.
Yeah, incredible, incredible. Was that always the plan for you to sort of move away from Nigeria? Did the family come with you?
Oh, no. I mean, growing up, I never imagined I would ever have those opportunities. It was certainly not something, I lived in a town called Ibadan, which literally means between the forest and the plains. And there was a local university there that my parents had gone to, and I assumed that was where I was going to go to. So I'll never forget the day my mother kind of called me and she said, "Hey, you've got the opportunity to sit for some of these scholarship exams." And I was so excited and I sat for the scholarship exam. I got into the school, but I did not get the scholarship. And I was just so grateful for how my parents and my grandparents and really our community kind of came together to help me get into that school. I mean, I'll never forget, my grandfather literally emptying his bank account for me to be able to go to A levels and then on to Harvard. It was a real sacrifice. And so I've always thought my success is not my success, it's our success. How am I driving impact in the communities that I serve? Because I would certainly not be here without the sacrifice. And I was not the only grandchild. There were a lot of grandchildren. So really that sacrifice is something that I think about every day. And I think about how am I using what I have to help others and kind of create that opportunity for other people.
That's so interesting, Dara. Now, listen, I've known you for a number of years. You've been on the MMA board for quite some time, and you've spoken at a couple of events over the years. So, I feel like I've gotten to know you in a bunch of different ways. And you're right. I think that I think your life is sort of completely oriented around a sense of gratitude. Now that I think about what you've said, what you just said, and when I look back on some of the things you've shared, that really is it, isn't it, for you? You're just really grateful for where you are and what's happened to you in the life that you've been given.
I'm very grateful. In fact, one of the things that I do every day is I keep a journal. And one of the components I write about every day is gratitude. I'm in a position I never thought I would be in. And I think there are a lot of people who maybe they expected to be where they are, but I certainly never expected that. It just wasn't even something that I anticipated. I could have the life that I have now. And so I'm so grateful for that. And with that gratitude comes a deep sense of responsibility of how am I lifting others up even as I climb And how am I leaving this world a better place than where I found it, and creating opportunities for people, especially people who look like me, who maybe never expect to get to the positions that I've had the opportunity to be in.
Yeah, I love your sense of responsibility to that and an orientation to gratefulness. It's funny you mentioned earlier, just, it's about training your mind. The number one book I wanted to give my kids, and if they listen to my podcast, and God knows if they ever really will, but we'll see. I don't know. They've still not read my book, so whatever, who knows? But, whatever. Although they are
All kids
grateful.
are like that, by the way. All kids are like that.
And they are
I have my kids read my ads. They're always like, do better, Mom. Do better.
Mom, you can raise the game here a little bit.
Exactly.
No, one of my favorite books is How a Man Thinketh. And it's just a little tiny book. And it's old. It's hundreds of years old. But it really just orients it that it's really, you are your thoughts. There is really, in essence, nothing else. So I love that. Okay. So you end up over at Autodesk and you come in to do some great ads. And so I think I know where our conversation is going to go, right? So I think I know what's going to happen here. So let's remind the listener of the thesis of this podcast, Building Better CMOs. What do you think marketers don't totally get about marketing? Or what maybe, you can answer the couple of what maybe they don't appreciate? What do they think they would be better as a result of a new orientation? What's the thing you'd like to pick on today that you think marketers could have a better appreciation for?
I really think it's creative effectiveness. One of the things, when I think about my values as a marketer, I really believe in the power of creativity. I'm not just talking about creating wonderful creative, which is really important, but how are you applying creativity to every aspect of your job? I think of creativity as that pixie dust that makes everything fly and gives you exponential return on your investment. It allows you to get more ROI. It allows you to really exceed expectations and go beyond. And so I value creative effectiveness very much. And I think as marketers, many people who get into marketing, it is because we are drawn, even if we are data scientists, we're analytical people, we are drawn to storytelling. We are drawn to creativity. We enjoy that. And it is really important that we bring that to every aspect of what we do. And I don't think we focus on that enough. And creative effectiveness is actually one of the keys to success as a marketer.
And so what taught you that? Where'd you pick that lesson up? I don't know that they teach that in B school or wherever, right? I don't know. Where'd you get that?
This is one of those hard-earned things that you learn on the road of life, right? I've had the fortune of being a CMO a few times now. It was funny. One of my friends said to me, well, Dara, you are a veteran CMO. I was like, girl, I like that so much. I'm going to include that in my bio. Thank you very much. But as a veteran CMO, as my friend called me, I've learned, in fact, that's how she saved me in her phone. It's pretty funny. I've learned a few things. And one of the things I've learned this, right? Because I've seen when I've had the opportunity to really tap into creativity in every aspect of my business, and I've been able to inspire and motivate my teammates to do the same, the results have always exceeded our expectations. And when I look back at moments that I feel like, oh, we could have done better there, it's always because we didn't lean into creativity. It was always because we sort of got into a bit of a rote situation, or we just started trying to please everybody and we didn't trust our instincts. And so that it's really, I have learned this. This is what I have lived. And this is what I deeply believe because of the bank of experience that I draw on.
What first taught you that, though? Because listen, you have an MBA, okay?
Yes.
From
yes.
a very well-established school in California. So listen, I don't know that they push that within MBA classes so much of that kind of. So what was the first time you went, was there an aha moment? Did you suddenly went creative is so critical?
There was absolutely a moment. This was actually in my time at Apple. When I was at Apple, I was working in an amazing department with an amazing leader called Brad Freitag. And we were working on really communicating the power of custom apps. So if you think about it, you go to the App Store and there's almost an app for everything. But believe it or not, there are a lot of folks out there who might not find the exact app to do what they want. So they want to build their own app. And we were selling software that allowed you to do that, whether you were an individual or a small business or a department within a large business. And one of the things that really turbocharged that and enabled us to kind of go beyond was really leaning into creativity. And obviously, creativity and design is a core part of the DNA at Apple. And so being able to see how, we were this department, but when we were able to really turn on our creative hats, we were able to go beyond. We were able to plug in to some of the big things that Apple was doing, with the iPad across all these stores all around the world. And so it was that moment that I realized, wow, this creativity thing isn't just about an ad campaign or creative, but it's really about process. It's about planning. It's about how we think holistically about the marketing, demand generation, and growth efforts and the full funnel. That was the first moment that I really tapped into that. And I've carried that with me ever since.
Got it. And then have you tried to bring that into GE and
Oh,
obviously Peloton was
absolutely.
amazing. I mean, that's historical now at this point. But yeah, GE, same thing.
Absolutely. I pretty much took that to every job I had, whether it was my, first CMO job being the CMO of GE Business Innovations and GE Ventures. When I went to, become the CMO of Carbon, which is an exciting 3D printing company based here in Silicon Valley, to Peloton, to now Autodesk. I've been able to take that with me in every job. And that has contributed a lot to my success in every role that I've been. Because no matter whatever job you have, there's going to be limitations, right? There's going to be challenges. And what I found that has helped me really rise above and rise up has been leaning into that creativity and the power of creative effectiveness and really trying to have that be something I share with my team. I'm always like, well, let's think a little differently. Let's get into debate mode and let's talk about, let's not put ourselves in a box, but let's imagine there is no box, right? And how would we approach this? How would we think about this? And just really pushing myself and those around me to kind of think differently.
Okay, so you go into Autodesk, what I would consider to be a very highly technical, traditional Silicon Valley, I'll say it again, tech company, right? So I think that's who they are. Very interesting, cool stuff. I mean, there's a lot of, they serve a number of really creative industries. So they border on that, but it's always felt very traditional. So did you have a conversation with the CEO and or the board before you went in there and says, listen, this is how I'm going to play the game in creative? Or did you just come in and sort of say, well, this is my job. This is how we're going to do it? How did you sort of get the company to adopt that? Or did you need to sell it in advance?
Here's the thing. Before I got the job, I had written my 100-day plan. And I sent it in before I even got an offer. And that was important to me, yes, because I wanted to make sure what I am about, what my plans were, what my initial thought, of course, with a lot of caveats, because even as much research as you've done, as much as you've talked to people, there's a lot you don't know. And so it was caveated with, there's a lot I don't know, but based on what I know, here's kind of my 100-day plan, and sent that in. And my purpose for doing that was to make sure there was an alignment between what I believe the job to be done is and my approach and what they were looking for. And fortunately, there was that alignment. So I haven't had, this has actually been an incredible one. And I've been privileged to have a lot of great jobs and work for some really phenomenal people. But, our leadership team here, our chief, CEO, Andrew Anagnos, our COO, Steve Blum, these are some of the most incredible human beings. And so there was an alignment from day one. So I did not have to it wasn't like I came in and it was like, oh, an uphill. Of course, there are challenges and there are lots of battles, but that wasn't it, right? It was like any job. You don't have a job at this level that doesn't have, something that you're navigating, whether it's navigating economic uncertainty, whether it's navigating, you're always going to be navigating something at this level. But that alignment is there and has been there from day one. So it's made it a lot easier because I'm fighting the right battles, right? I'm fighting the battles of how do we achieve the growth that we're trying to achieve? How do we elevate our brand? How do we deliver on the outcomes for our customers? I'm fighting the right battles, not the battles of how do I, get my CEO to understand what the job to be done is.
Yeah, not the internal discussion. Here's the playbook on how we're going to do this. You got that aligned from the very beginning. That's so important. It's funny. I've often repeated this story. The most interesting meeting I think I've had in running the MMA was a group of CMOs, and I'll even name names. The CMO of GM it was before Deborah, but CMO GM was there. Duncan, T-Mobile, Allstate, Chobani, like a bunch of big time CMOs, right? And I'll never forget, we had a throwaway question to begin this little private session we were doing. It was what's the role of CMO? What's the role of marketing? Dara, 1 hour later, we never got to a second question. because we realized nobody in the room agreed what the role of CMO and marketing was. It was all different. And I remember the time going, how will we ever expect CEOs, CFOs, or boards to sort of work with us if we've not agreed on how we're going to, what's our go-to-market strategy for marketing? And so, yes, so you took the time to make sure, are we aligned? We're going to be, I'm assuming the 100-day plan said we're going to be creatively driven, I assume.
Yes.
How'd you express that in the 100-day plan? Do you remember?
I really laid out, here's my vision. Here is how I believe the ways and the approach I'm going to accomplish this vision. Here's how I'm going to spend the 100 days to get myself set up for success. And so that was kind of baked into it, right? So there was that understanding. And that's why within 30 days of being on the job, I was able to kind of launch a first campaign, which was really a test. Because here's the thing. You've got what your instincts are telling you, right? What your intuition is telling you, but you've got to test it because you're going to validate or invalidate it. And the reality was there's even 1 year in and there's still a lot I'm learning, you know? And so it was important to test it early so that I can know whether or not, because if this isn't the path, then I got to come up with another plan, right? I've got to pivot. Fortunately, the homework and the research I'd done in advance and my experience was such that the plan has been the right plan. And so we've been able to kind of course, develop it with my I have such an amazing team. The people I work with are just some of the most brilliant, intelligent people. And so being able to kind of work to hone it in and, make it better. But I came in with the vision, and I think that's really important. Of course, the vision got fine-tuned, but having a vision is so key because without a vision, your team isn't sure what you're doing or where you're going or what to do.
Mm-hmm. Does marketing have a mission there?
Oh, yes, we've got a mission.
Can you repeat it? I don't know if it's public. Can you say it?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say our mission. I don't know. We have a mission. It's exciting. I said it's a little too exciting. That's why I'm like,
it's a little too exciting. No, wait, that requires explanation. What do you mean it's a little too exciting?
No. I just mean, of course, we've got a mission. We've got a bold mission. Everyone in our organization knows it's something I've repeated again and again and again and repeat every time. Because one of the things I realized as a leader, just when you get to the point when you get sick of saying something, that's when it starts to really seep in. It's really at the point where you're sick of it is when it starts to really seep in.
I find the most valuable exercise I do sometimes is I ask people some period of time later, 24 hours a week, a month, I don't care what it is, say, tell me what we agreed to before. I want to know either the game of telephone that's gone on in the company or within your own head to make sure that we're still aligned. Because if we don't start from the right basis, we're not going to get there. Okay. And so did the company buy in to do a bunch of creative ads? What would push an Autodesk to think that that's what they wanted to do? Did you talk to that?
Absolutely. And I think the key is, what are we trying to accomplish as a business? What are we trying to do for our customers, and how does this play into it? So we have been out there in talking about where we are going as a company. And growth is really important to us. And so we want to attract new audiences. Well, you're not going to attract new audiences by doing things the way you've always done them. We are over 41 years old, and we're still an innovative, really smart, wonderful company that's focused on solving our customers' problems. And we have to be able to reach our customers where they are. So everything that we've done has been authentic. For example, the very first ad that we did, which was launched in the finale of The Walking Dead, our software had been used to bring that series to life for all those seasons. So it was authentic to us to participate in the ads in the finale because we had been used to create the series. So it wasn't like, oh, why are you here? What are you doing? It was authentic to us.
I've always dreamed of creating a better world. And thanks to Autodesk software, anything you can imagine, you can design and make. So imagine a day when a closed door is no longer a dead end. I did, and I'd like to present to you the world's first grunt-powered door handle. Now nothing can stop us. Except stairs, those are tough.
Or when we kind of had the big takeover at the Oscars, which has been, one of our very, very successful campaigns of 2023. And I'm so inspired by our amazing team and partners at Maximum Effort, our creative agency, who helped to bring that to life. our ability to do that was rooted in the insight and the fact that our software had been used in almost every single Oscar winning animation movie since 1997. And we hadn't really talked about it. Everything we're doing is rooted in the fact, it's rooted in something that was real and substantial. So it wasn't like, oh, we just showed up with a bunch of random ads and it's like, what are you doing? Why are you here? There was real authenticity. We were just kind of celebrating what was already real.
Of all the legendary names in Hollywood, one stands out, Otto Duschinsky, affectionately known to his friends as Autodesk.
What do I think when you mention the name Autodesk? Hollywood legend, icon.
I wouldn't be the filmmaker I am today without Autodesk.
You'd been there on that journey with consumers in the Oscars or Walking Dead for that matter. For years, you'd been helping support their experience of that. They just didn't know because you were in the back. Autodesk was in the background. Right.
They just didn't know. And when you think about this is all tied to a core thing of who we are, which is make anything. We empower everyone everywhere to make anything. Yeah. And so being able to show how that comes to life has been a powerful part of our strategy.
Hey, Dara, I usually don't ask this. To tell people, just for maybe those who don't know, because I've looked at the company, so I know what Autodesk does. What do you do? And there's 3 or 4 core industries, as I recall, that you guys operate in. Tell people what it is.
Absolutely. So Autodesk is software for people who make things. So we are the design and make platform that really empowers everyone everywhere to design and make anything, whether that is an exciting movie that you watch, maybe the Barbie movie or the Oppenheimer movie, or it is the building that you're sitting in right now as you're listening to this podcast, or it's a car that you're using to drive, on the road to get you from point A to point B. In architecture, construction, engineering, product design and manufacturing, media and entertainment, from greener buildings to cleaner cars and, really critical infrastructure, our software is used to design and make the world that we see around us. And so it's been really exciting to bring that to the forefront, right? Because many times people actually want to know what is behind the things that they use and love. And so it's been really a joy to be able to tell those stories and bring that to the forefront.
Yeah, it's almost a variation, and maybe you don't like this example, but the Intel Inside, example that sort of most consumers can repeat that. So I think it's good that I understand this sort of orientation to make sure that everybody understands that Autodesk's behind what you see and experience and feel and touch. So you come in there to do creative ads, and listen, you said one of the funniest things anybody has ever said on one of our stages at one of the MMA events. It was some variation of, because we know everybody else in the C-suite does advertising marketing as a side hustle, which is what we in marketing all know. We live with the fact that we do things that are public, and therefore everybody's got an opinion, or many people have an opinion about what we do. So what about getting the rest of the company and engineers to take this creative marketing, creative advertising approach? What's some of the lessons learned you've had around that? And what are some of the challenges that maybe people should watch out if they're going to go down a similar path?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is, my job as a global CMO here at Autodesk is expansive, right? So yes, advertising is a piece of it, but I oversee, so much more than that. Our digital, our e-commerce, all of our growth marketing, our industry and portfolio marketing, our communications group, our education business. So it's been really important to me to make sure that I'm clear on my vision for my holistic organization across all of those areas, right? Because as a CMO, I think it's really important that you're never reduced to like the person who just does the creative ads, right? I think it's really important that you are really clear on your remit and what you're being asked to do. So having a clear vision, a clear mission, and then being able to actually really communicate that with other folks in leadership. So one of the first things I did was really do a listening tour. And I say that intentionally. It was a listening tour, right? To be a sponge and kind of go and hear from all of the leaders, what were their thoughts about my organization? What did they think was working well? What did they think was not working well? And what were their kinds of hopes and wishes, right, for the future of the organization? So I really took that very seriously, took very detailed notes, really listened, was a sponge, immersed myself. And that way I was able to adapt and adjust my plan to reflect what I had heard and the findings that I had heard. It helped hone and refine so that the plan that I was running with was not just what Dara had thought, but was reflective of what was needed.
Do you have an example of something that somebody said to you that kind of went, oh, there, like, was there an aha moment or a couple of aha moments in that you went, oh, I don't know if I would have looked at the world like that. That's interesting. Or anything you can share around that that'd be helpful to people.
Absolutely. So one of the things that was shared with me, and this was actually in a conversation with our CFO, right, was help me better understand, and I'm paraphrasing here, right, the return on investment, right? Because many times what happens as marketers is we start to report out on our marketing metrics. We don't take the time to translate that to the business metrics. And so it's hard, right, for the finance team to understand, okay, you're telling me about engagement, but I'm not really sure how that's translating into helping the business. And it's really important that sales and marketing are telling the same story, right? I don't know if I remember when I was coming up in my career and a job that I had where the sales leader would get up and you would be thinking it is doomsday. And then the CMO would get up and you would be thinking you were out here having a party with rainbows and unicorns. And it was like, which is it? What's happening here? And I remember even earlier on in my career, I was like, okay, that's never going to be me. It is so important that sales and marketing are aligned and that we're speaking with the same metrics that matter to the business. And so that's an example of, obviously I had this and this was really important to me, but it highlighted how key that modernization effort was going to be for the work to be done. So it made me realize that, okay, this is something that, because this is a complex business across multiple industries in multiple countries, to get that infrastructure right. So we are better able, it's not as easy as, okay, we've got one product and a few markets, right? It was clear to me that, okay, that I've got to make sure that it's not just the interesting work that everyone sees, but there's that back end work, right? Of really having the right infrastructure, the right data, the right tech stack, so that we can better report on the ROI of our marketing efforts. That was something that I was like, okay, got to figure out how we dial that up.
So I'm not sure if this is right. I want to probe that a couple of times because I think that's so important. And MMA is doing a project we call a program, initiative, whatever. The global board told us to do it last year. You were there around what we now call Project Romy, which is how does marketing connect to finance? How do the CMO and the CFO get along? And Rex Briggs, who's been doing that work for us, just shared his sort of year kind of analysis so far. We think we're on a 2-year journey. I think it's hard for marketers to sometimes have that conversation with the CFO. Can you get into a little more detail there about either what you promised? And I think one way to maybe go at that too is, what did you have to maybe bring into the company in terms of capabilities that set you up for success with that kind of conversation or that sort of readout at some point, that connection to the finance of the business? So I don't know if you did from capabilities or if you already had that in-house, you just had to reformulate it.
Yeah, so we have an amazing CFO. Our CFO is Debbie Clifford, and she's really amazing because she's such a great business leader and has a really decent grasp and an understanding of how different parts of the business kind of come together. And so that conversation, it was good because I was speaking to someone who had an open mind, right? And had already been doing some thinking around this. Now, with regards to what we had to do together, we had a demand generation group, we had a digital media center, and we had a marketing operations team. And these teams were separate. And I brought them together into a strong, high-performing growth marketing organization. And that's because, think about it. If you're doing demand, why is media separate from demand? And why is marketing operations and kind of the measurement and analytics separate from that? Bringing all these together in one powerful growth marketing organization was one of the changes. So there were pieces there, but it was about putting those puzzle pieces together and really being clear on the charter to be able to kind of accelerate and move us forward. So that was one of the capabilities that we brought in.
So those capabilities had existed in the company, you said, and you brought them together in a new way, or did you have to bring in new talent to do that?
Well, it's been a combination, right? So some of the capabilities, the individual teams existed. We had to kind of bring them together. And of course, there's been some infusion of new talent and also elevation of some of existing talent, right? To make sure that we've got the right people in the right seats, in the right roles to be able to kind of propel us forward.
Yeah. There obviously had been a growth mindset within Autodesk previously, right? But was there an acceleration of that growth mindset, or it was just they were looking for a new orientation to it?
Yeah, it was definitely an acceleration. And I think an acceleration with clarity on the vision of where we go from there.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after this with Dara Treseder. This is Building Better CMOs. Let's get back to my conversation with Dara Treseder, the Chief Marketing Officer at Autodesk. Listen, I want to go back to one thing you said earlier that I kept meaning to sort of touch on. You said earlier, too, that you measured or tested creative. And
Yes.
there's some people, a little old school, I'll admit, who don't think that creative either should be tested or evaluated. I don't know. Maybe that's not a debate that really matters to us anymore. But what did you do to kind of assess that you had the right orientation to what you were ultimately going to produce?
Well, when I say I tested creative, maybe just to be clear on what I meant by that is I was testing how creative effectiveness would work for Autodesk in our different industries, right? So we did a test to figure out, okay, because the company hadn't done TV advertising in like a very long time. I don't even know, it was just not something we'd done. And so it was important for me before going out and saying, hey, let's go hard here to kind of test and figure out, does this work for us? Does this resonate with our key audiences? And so we did that test, which showed us, yes, it does. And here's how you can utilize it, and kind of gave us the confidence that we had to do what we ended up doing with the Oscars and kind of building that muscle. So that's what I meant by, I think it's important when you have a theory or a hypothesis to test that hypothesis, because the test you do will either validate your hypothesis or invalidate it. And either way, I think that's success, because if it invalidates it, then it prevents you from over investing in a tactic or a strategy that's not going to work. And if it validates it, then it gives you the gumption and the credibility to be able to move forward.
Have you been in other situations where the creative either didn't play, or because you were doing some analysis, you found out it wasn't really working and you had to totally rejigger? Do you have an example of that by chance?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you what
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
work out.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
Dara, what I love the most, I love when you meet people outside the business and they think, oh, marketing advertising manipulates consumers. I'm like, no, you have no idea how much power consumers have. I've been crushed by being wrong from consumers more often than I feel like I've ever manipulated somebody or something silly. That's very old school hucksterism.
The power is
silly.
with the people.
Powers with the people. No
I
kidding.
don't think you can manipulate. I actually think marketing leans in to what we are already, and it gives us the permission to kind of take the step. So I think that's kind of what it does. But it's not so much manipulation as maybe energizing us and giving us that nudge that we need to do what we already wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so when has it, I don't know, how'd you figure out it wasn't working? Or when were you kind of like, oh my God, we just got that wrong? Or I don't know, give me an example for people on that, maybe lessons learned.
So I won't say the company.
Yeah.
We'll just say, in a faraway land long, long ago, I was in a role, overseeing marketing, and we had launched this creative that I had very high hopes for. It was rooted in deep insight. We had done a lot of work. And in fact, it's actually one of my mentors and friends who gave me the phrase and said it was on target, but it was not bullseye. It sort of worked, but it didn't work the way we needed it to. And the reason for that was, we were trying to do something we hadn't done before. And I remember when we were first pitched on the idea by the agency, I thought to myself, this is a lot. Because when you're trying to grab attention, I'm a big believer in simplicity. Because I think when you're trying to do a lot with an ad, where you fall in love with your own idea and you think it's a lot funnier than everybody else thinks it is?
Yes. If I like it, I'm suspicious is kind of
exactly. You fall in love with your own idea. You like it a little too much. And I'll never forget when the rough cut came back and I watched it. I cried. I'm not even gonna lie.
Really? You knew this is not gonna work. Is that
this is not gonna work. I literally cried, and I was crying. My husband, whose office was next to mine, he came in, and he was like, "Honey, you okay?" And I was like, "Can I show you something? I want you to tell me what you really think." And he was like, "I'm sure it's not that bad. I'm sure it's not that bad." I played for him, and he was like, "Oh, it's bad. You got to fix that. You're gonna get fired." He's a Marine, so he always calls it like it is. And I was like, oh no. And I was like, who else can I show this? So I kind of take it down and I show my kids and my goddaughter who lives with us. And they watched it and they were all like, I don't know what this is. I'm not sure what you're trying to do. And And so I kind of realized, I said, whoa, this is not good. So I remember kind of calling, my head of creative and being like, this is not it. We got to figure it out. So we're working, trying to get it to a good place. We get it to a good place, but it's good, not great. And we needed great, but we were out of time and we had to kind of launch with what we had. And we got results that were good, not great. And it was supposed to be great. It was supposed to be this really big thing. So I will tell you what I learned from that. What I learned from that is trust your instincts. As a CMO, as a marketer, you've got these instincts. And I remember when I thought this is too much, and that was exactly what it was. It was too much. It was too much to communicate in kind of the 30-second spots we had to communicate it in. It was too complex. And that was a big lesson. It was like, trust your instincts. If your instincts are telling you that something is too much, it's not working, don't ignore that voice, right? It's important because marketing is art and science. Don't ignore the art side of things because it's the best marketing unifies the art and science. That's when you get the magic.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I know. And, listen, I've been in those situations. The thing I always hated too, I hated sitting in a room with everybody else without any other distraction in a conference room and watching the ad. I'm like, this is not anybody's experience. And then we would play it over and over again, which is no one's experience ever on the consumer side. And so I've always been a big believer, like, I want to see it in context. I don't want to see it in isolation because that's not how anybody's ever going to know it. So,
and my big thing now is you got to also play with the sound off and see whether it grabs you or not.
Right. Hey, do you think that the new, listen, there's so many ad formats today, which is both wonderful and horrifying at maybe some level. But what do you think about sort of the movement to shorter ads, lower attention, or maybe higher attention, but, faster environments like mobile, typical? How do you sort of plan and orient around some of those today?
I think you've got to have a mix, right? So every time you're kind of working to pull something together, you need to look at your full marketing mix. And I think you need to think about all the environments that might make sense for you to show up into your target audience. And some of that will be those short 6-second ads, right? Some of them will be, the traditional 30-second, 15-second, 10-second. Some of them will be, you want to tell a full story and you may want a longer time format where you can kind of bring people in and suck them in. And so I think you've got to think through, okay, what am I trying to say? What are the different avenues that I need to say it in? And what I will say is try to make it custom build. So what I found is when you think, oh, I'm just going to make a 60-second and I'm just going to cut it without actually saying what is the right version of the 6-second. I'm not saying don't be efficient and shoot it all at the same time, but don't just think I'm going to cut it. Right? Think about what you want each of those to be, because that allows you to actually be a lot more effective. That custom build, purpose-built ads are so much better than when you try to force something in. You ever seen that 6-second ad and you're like, what the hell was that? It's because someone just took something and they were like, well, let's try to make it 6 seconds, as opposed to be thinking about what can I communicate effectively in 6 seconds? Okay, let's shoot it all together so we're saving time, we're saving money, but it's purpose-built.
So speaking of formats, have you seen your old employer Apple's climate ad yet?
Yes, of course.
Mother Nature, welcome to Apple. How was the weather getting in?
The weather was however I wanted it to be. Let's cut to the chase. In 2020, you promised to bring Apple's entire carbon footprint to zero by 2030. Henry David Thoreau over here said we have a profound opportunity to build a more sustainable future for the planet we share.
I think our 10 o'clock said the same thing.
They all do.
What do you think? Come on, you don't work there anymore. Autodesk doesn't have a relationship with Apple. Do you? I don't know. I don't have any idea. Can you speak freely on this one, or?
Here's what I would say. I appreciate the strategy. ESG has been under attack, right? We are in a season where ESG is under attack, DE&I is under attack. And what I love about what Apple did was it said, we're not the kind of company that just blows with the wind. We have our values. We have stuff that's important to us. And it's always been important to us, and it's always going to be important to us. And that's sustainability. And I love that Apple leaned into that. At Autodesk, sustainability is important to us too. So it was very heartening to see a company take a stand like that. at a time when it's maybe not the trendy thing to do. I also like that they did that in a creative way, in a different way than what was expected, right? It wasn't your traditional. And of course, I'm sure there will be, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of companies starting to do this. But before Apple did it, I hadn't really seen anyone else release an ESG report with that type of
Yeah.
gusto and creativity. So it was lovely to see them try something different and do
Yeah.
something different. And it was effective, right? At the end of the day, that day, the amount of times people were pinging me about that ad that day, it was more than 30 people, whether it was within my company, outside my company. So imagine that. And I'm just one person. The multiplier effect of that, they got their message across.
And Apple offices are already carbon neutral.
This building is carbon neutral?
Oh, yeah, we do it with a mix of clean energy and eliminating greenhouse emissions. It's kind of like if you were to...
You're seriously explaining carbon neutrality to Mother Nature?
Right, no, I'm sorry.
You want to tell me how photosynthesis works too? Don't.
Yeah, I think they did a pretty phenomenal job. And you know what's funny too? I felt like they really humanized the company. They humanized Tim Cook a little bit too. It kind of made Apple seem not the big bad company because, they were accountable to Mother Nature, and she was wonderful in that ad. Her performance was incredible. I thought the whole thing. I thought, well played. Apple always takes a high road. So
yes, I thought the same. Look, at the end of the day, I think the most important thing as a marketer is be memorable.
Yeah. Yes.
You've got to be memorable. And it was memorable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many ads I've seen. I don't remember anything about them. It was memorable.
Or that I don't feel a need to see them again. And I brought it home and showed it to my wife. I said, you got to see this. This is really well done. Yeah, there we go. The extended impressions. Yeah, well played. Well played, Apple. Good job. So you talked about creativity in all parts of the organization. We just go on. I mean, we kind of focus on the visualization of the ads here a lot because that's sort of what's always sexy and interesting about our business at some level. But talk about the creativity in other parts of the business here for a little bit. What does that mean? You said that at the very beginning.
Yeah, so it's, I've really tried to make sure that we are applying creativity to our planning process, for example, how we plan. I think it's really important when we're planning that not only are we planning for what I think of as baked, but how are we also planning for the unexpected? The only thing we know after the past 5 years is there's stuff we don't know that's going to happen. And how are we prepared for that? You have to leave space for the agile and opportunistic. And so when we're planning, we are thoughtful because if you spend 100 of your resources on the plan and then things happen that you don't know, how do you deal with those things? You're not ready to deal with them. You're not able to deal with them. So we plan 80% for what's baked. We leave 20% to be agile and opportunistic. That's us.
Oh, you do? Wow.
Be opportunistic.
Oh, wow. You leave that in the budget. You leave that in your time commitments in the programs. Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
And then within the 80% that is planned, 70% of that's got to be tried and true. So we know I put this is exact. I put in X, I get Y, right?
Yeah.
20% is going to be an innovation on that 70%.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, how are we making that 70% better?
Classic Silicon Valley innovation form. 70% what you know works, 20% iterate on what you think worked. It could be made better. 10% wild, crazy ass ideas. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we use that framework, for the 80%, and then 20% we have it for the agile and unexpected.
I think that's a big deal. Listen, I did have an opportunity to write a book a number of years ago on marketing. It was around the creation of multi-touch attribution, which taught me more about marketing than anything. And so we repeated that as a part of it. And one of the other theses we did too around that 10%, I think this is one of the most interesting things that sort of me and others struck upon. Just, I don't know, I don't want to be too self-congratulatory in that, but was that to realize that, look for things that are impactful, but don't focus on efficiency or cost effectiveness to begin with. If you focus on efficiency, you'll miss the bigger opportunity. And that's where I think you take those 10% crazy ideas, go, wow, that really worked. Let's move it over to 20%. Now let's see if we can iterate to make it efficient. Because right now it's way too goddamn. We couldn't be doing that again and again. That doesn't make any sense from an economic investment standpoint. That was one of the important lessons that I've used in those kinds of things. Like, let's make sure that we figure out where to go and then figure out how to make it really work for us. And then if it doesn't pan out, then eventually you get rid of it.
Exactly. I think that's exactly how to think about it, because the reality is when you want different results, you can't do things exactly the way you've always done them and expect different results. So how do you build that innovation into the planning process?
So, Dara, let's shift here a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about what it takes to get to the C-suite. So, you've been a CMO 3 times now?
4 times.
4 times. Crazy. Wow. At your age, too. That's really nuts. Okay. When did you start to realize that maybe you had a shot to do something like that?
I'll never forget the moment. I had done, some of those kind of classical when you're in a senior leadership position and you're considered, important potential succession. And I'd done one of those assessments. And I was getting the results from kind of the coach that had conducted the assessment. And the person said to me, and this was our big boss, and he said to me, this CEO really believes in you. I knew he valued my work. I knew he thought well of me, but it hadn't clicked to me that he really believed in me and thought I could have the top job. And the coach was like, I just want to share some of his comments with you. I started to share those comments with me, and I was in tears because at the time I was doing the work. I knew I could get there, but I knew I could, but I didn't think I would. And I didn't think I would because I didn't think anyone would give me the shot.
Really?
And so to kind of hear that someone saw me in that position. And at the time, the top job was not vacant. There was someone else in it, and I wasn't in it. But the fact that this, man who's still a great mentor of mine saw me in such a positive way was so inspiring to me. And I'll never forget, I kind of left that meeting and I said, and of course, also there were all the things I needed to work on as well. I put a PowerPoint together that day. I got home late. I put a PowerPoint together and I kind of went to my husband and I said, I want us to make an investment in me because I believe I can be a CMO, but I have to work on all these things. And, it was a short-term thing. So that coach was only going to be with me for that assessment. He was gone. And I was like, I want to actually hire someone to be alongside me as I develop and work on all these other things I need to work on so that when I do get that top job, I am ready to go and I can keep it. I can keep myself at that level. And I remember the pitch to my husband and he was like, okay, let's talk about it. What's the time to pay back? And I had a whole time to pay back. Here's when we're going to get the ROI and the value of our investment. Here's what it's going to look like. And, he was so wonderful because he was like, okay, all right, let's make the investment. It was time bound. So it was like, if it doesn't happen, we're going to, and you know what? I think about that a lot because many times people are waiting for someone else to invest in them. And it's like, well, oh, I never got this, or you know what? You got to invest in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, how do you expect anyone else to believe in you? So we made that investment and hired a coach.
You did.
To work with me and help me, accomplish this. And it was expensive. It wasn't cheap because I wanted to get a really good coach. It was an expensive investment, but we made that investment for me to pay personally to hire someone to help me.
The company didn't do it. You did it yourself.
No, the company didn't do it because at the time, those kind of coaches were really for people in the top job. At that place, I wasn't in the top job. So I got a little thing to help me with that assessment, but I was like, I want to be in the top job. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go and I need this. And so I paid for that myself.
Dara, I think that's so smart. It's brilliant. In fact, I've never heard anybody else who's ever said that. And I think you're listen, Bob Pittman spoke at one of our events, iHeartMedia. And he opened with, he goes, the only advantage of getting older is pattern recognition. I have pattern recognition now. I'm of the age, I have pattern recognition. And as I look back, I think if you're serious, listen, not everybody's serious about business or serious about succeeding. That's okay, whatever. If you don't have a coach, I think you're a fool. I think you must have somebody alongside to guide you. All great performers, all great athletes have coaches. Of course they do. And so if you're serious, if you really want to play the game, you have to have it. And so have I for decades. I totally agree. Single greatest investment you made was a coach?
Absolutely. That was the big investment and working with that coach, I work with that coach to get into that top job.
Why is a coach important? Why is that getting help, get a coach, seeking support, insight outside of yourself? Why is that important, by the way, as you look back on it now? Why did it matter?
Just like you said, every great athlete needs a coach, right? And I think, you're a business athlete, so you might not be running on the track or playing in the US Open or in Wimbledon, but you're an athlete in the corporate sense and you need a coach. And what I found the coach did was help me with three things. My coach really helped me build my confidence as a leader. And as a leader, if you're not confident, it's hard for you to lead. Nobody wants to follow a shaky person. The minute you realize, think about it. If you were on an airplane and the pilot was like, hey, everyone, I'm not really sure if what we're doing, think about.
We'd never fly again.
We'd never fly that airline ever again. No one wants to be on the ship of a captain who does not know where they're going. And so having that confidence, I think, is really, 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 really important.
Okay.
That piece is really important. The second thing that a coach really helps you to do is it helps you hone your intuition as a leader. That's one of the things, that instinct that you have. There's a saying, I believe it might be Amazon who has this saying that leaders are mostly right. And they're in that position because they're mostly right. They're not always right. No one is always right.
No one's always right.
Leaders are mostly right. And the reason they're mostly right is that pattern recognition, is their ability to have the right instincts and be able to have the right judgment. And you need to learn how to do that. It's a muscle, right? The more you use it, the better you get. And having a coach where you can reflect on when I didn't use it, when I didn't lean into it, when I used it too much, that is so important. And so my coach really helped me with honing that intuition and being able to kind of master and trust my instincts. And then the last piece of it is really, as a leader, you have to be able to take risks. Part of leading is taking risks, but you're not just taking nilly-willy risks, right? You're taking what I like to call clear-eyed risk. What is a clear-eyed risk? A clear-eyed risk is where you gather as much data as you can, you strip away uncertainty, and then you make a decision with conviction. And that ability to make a clear-eyed risk, you need to have someone you can talk to as you're thinking through those risks. And having a coach, an unbiased, objective person that can kind of talk through that with you is really, really helpful. So those are, I have found that to be invaluable.
Yeah. You know what it is for me? You're never making decisions with perfect information, ever.
Yes.
Ever. And that is the nature of business because, in fact, the more advanced, you have to make further out decisions that have even lower sets of data to make decisions upon. So it's intuition largely, right? And decision making is what will help you to succeed or fail. It's just that simple. It's just about making better decisions, a few percentage point better decisions that I would have made on my own. And sometimes they're colossally better decisions. Yeah. That comes up every once in a while. But it's like many decisions made a little bit better than I would have otherwise made them. And Absolutely. That, I just think it makes all the difference. Right. I'll tell you something else too. I don't get in this with the board much. I have a PhD in organizational psych on retainer at the MMA, and I have for over 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And he is available to anyone in the company who wants to just seek a perspective around, and there could be a myriad of things, how they make decisions, how they may even make personal decisions for themselves, how they organize their own work, how they sort of align themselves to the company if they feel misaligned, if they're struggling with something personally to find a way out of that or a path out of it might be. Sometimes it's if they feel like they need to have what might be otherwise a challenging or an uncomfortable conversation with me or somebody else, then they have an outlet for doing that because it's all about just improving the overall organism's sort of decision making at some level. Oh, it just is unbelievably invaluable.
That's amazing. What a great resource you have for you.
No. And to provide it for the company. And you know what's funny? I tell a lot of candidates we have that. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, yeah, I've heard of that. They've all said, really? I've never heard of that. It's very funny to me. It feels like corporate America kind of somehow misses that. Do we just expect people to all know what they're doing and figure it out all the time on their own? It feels funny to me.
Yeah, well, I think one of the wonderful things, at Autodesk is we do have those type of resources for our employees as well, so that they can kind of, get any sort of help they need, because I think one of the things that is so important is the mental health and well-being of your employees. And so having that resource that can kind of help you with that is so key and so important.
I agree, especially again in some of these really companies who really value human resources and the role that it can play to help people just kind of stay. Conversation we'll sometimes have with the staff of the MMA is to say, okay, listen, we're here to provide well-being services for you, but we'd like to hear what is your well-being plan? What are you doing to take care of yourself to be most effective, to be tuned up as an athlete here at the company, to try to do the best work you can every day, to feel most challenged by that, to take on the most challenging work. And so, because I think that's where when people can succeed on that, they feel their own sense of personal benefit. That pays dividends to the company and the individual. you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. We're all in charge of our own well-being, right? So I love
Correct.
that.
There's a big part of you, I've heard you speak in other places around sort of what you do around your sort of well-being. You mind sharing with people some of what you do around sort of managing your own life and access to life and so on? I know your meditation and there's other tools that you have.
Yeah, I it's funny to be talking about this on a business podcast, but I believe in the power of gratitude like we talked about. So I make sure that I practice gratitude. I believe that we are what we think and what we consume. And so I'm very intentional about what I consume. And I'm also very intentional about making sure that I'm reducing negative thoughts and I'm being very thoughtful about what I'm allowing to sit in my mind and in my heart. I know that that impacts how I show up as a leader in my professional life, but even, as a wife and a mother in my personal life. So that is really important to me. I do pray and I meditate, and that's important to me. I have my spiritual practice that I do every single day. And I'm a woman of faith, and my spiritual practice really sustains me. Everyone has got to find their thing, but it's funny because I've been in roles where my life is very public. What is happening to me, everyone can kind of read about it. And in those moments, I've had friends text me, and they're like, "How are you doing it?" My answer is always the same: I couldn't do it without my faith. Even when things are amazing, it keeps me humble because it reminds me that I'm no better than anybody else. I don't deserve it more than anybody else. I'm just filled with gratitude that I have the opportunity to walk in what I'm walking in. But that humility is so key. And so I work constantly to stay humble. And then when things are going bad and things are challenging, it gives me hope. It makes sure that I don't spiral into despair, but I remember that I'm still living and that there's hope. And so those two things, humility and hope, are the anchors of my life, and they're deeply rooted in my faith and in my spiritual practice.
It's funny. I don't think it's my place to say so. And I know HR would never let me say this, but the advice that I'd love to give to people, and I think I can say it here more broadly, not to just because I couldn't say it to an individual, is listen, there's two answers: get God or a therapist. Life is hard. There's struggle. Get help somewhere. You got to go on something. You got to have something. It's funny too. You went to Harvard. So Harvard MBA has a class. It's called happiness. And it was covered in the Wall Street Journal a little bit. And they had done a study to what determines happiness. And they said there were 4 elements that are happiness. And their thesis was that they need to teach MBAs to be happy because it's such a requirement in companies today that we make employees happy. And their thesis was, if you're not happy, how can you make anybody else happy? It's great. I think totally dumb. And they said there were 4 things. The first 2 are friends and family. Everybody was going to get that wrong. I've never had anybody get that one wrong yet. You're right. You got to have, friends and family. Those are the first 2 elements of it. The third one was challenging work. And they didn't say work with purpose. I agree with Scott Galloway. I think it's stupid we tell people personal work. Not everybody's going to, tax accountants don't feel like they have personal work, I suspect. Like, knock it off. It's just like challenging work is enough. And that's what, and I find the challenge. That's one of the reasons I think I'm happy. I have very challenging work. You have challenging work. You can see you're excited about it. The fourth one is interesting, is a philosophy of life, which is, a variation of what religion can be in some regards, or faith can be. But I think we don't emphasize that enough. You need to have an orientation to how life works to sort of get yourself to the right place sometimes, because life can be hard on times and life can throw tough things at you, really dramatic, tough things. So, yeah, I feel like we don't give people enough orientation to that. I wonder if that isn't one of the coming trends at some point into the future.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, at Stanford, there was a class called Interpersonal Dynamics, which talked about—
that was your favorite class there too,
that
didn't you?
was my favorite
I've
class,
seen you
right?
say that elsewhere. Yeah. What was that? What was the class about?
Look, there's how you see yourself. There's how other people see you. There's how you think other people see you. And often there's a divide between those things. And the more you can harmonize those things and develop skills across the full facet of who you truly are and become comfortable with yourself and how you show up, the happier you are and the more fulfilled you are. Everyone is going to have their own way they go about achieving that. And for me, I have found my spiritual practice to be how I go about achieving that. And for me, like I said, it's really anchored in those tenets of hope and humility.
I have a special request for you, Dara.
Okay.
I don't know that you've met my daughters at the CEO CMO Summit. I don't remember if I have actually introduced you to them or not. One thing that I notice about them is that I think it's maybe pervasive. So I'm be curious if you can tell me I'm wrong, by the way. That's fine on this. I'm not so sure that young women today have confidence in the way that sometimes young men exhibit themselves around business. And so I've often wondered if we don't need to somehow do more work to give them confidence. You strike me as somebody with an extraordinary amount, a woman with extraordinary amount of confidence today. So I guess the question I'd ask you, or the journey you've been on, is what advice would you have for a young woman today? Both my daughters are entering the workforce for the first time now, and it's going to be interesting to see where they go. What advice do you have for young women today? And you could disagree with my thesis. You could say, Greg.
I don't disagree with your thesis because it's always shocking to me how many, and this happens all the time, where men will show up for a role not really meeting and it's not so much qualifications, because I'm a big believer in giving people opportunity, but not being willing to do what it takes to have that job, right? A woman shows up, she's already doing it. She's willing, but she's doubting herself. Whereas the man who's not willing to do the job is like, why haven't I got it yet? That confidence. And I joke sometimes, but I'm like, wow, to have that confidence of,
what a gift. Maybe it's a gift. I don't know. We'll see.
What a gift. And it was funny because the other day I was coaching my daughter. She's doing her homework. She's in second grade. She just turned 8 and she's doing her homework. And I was coaching her on it. And I said to her, look, when it's a test, I know you're not going to always be perfect and you're going to make mistakes. When it's homework and you have the time to do it well, I want you to strive for excellence. And as I was saying it, I was thinking about why I was saying it. And the reason why I was saying it has been my journey as a Black woman, where it's like, I've always had to be prepared. I've always had to. There is not one job I've gone into that I haven't had my 100-day plan done before I got the job. I mean, from when I was in the kind of C-suite level, I have been over prepared. I work so hard at everything that I do. I care so much. And the reason is it's how I have to be in the position that I'm in. I have to work harder. I have to apply myself better. There can never be a question, right? It always has to be like, I get it. I see. This is the level that Dara delivers at. And the reality is she's a Black girl and that's going to be her. I hope that the world is more equitable. I'm not encouraged by some of the changes happening lately. I want her to be prepared for what life is. The reality is it's still hard as a woman. The reality is it's even harder if you are that and other things. Like there's that intersectionality, like being a Black woman or a Hispanic woman. That gap does exist. But here's what I would say. Be prepared. When you are prepared, when those opportunities come, you're ready for it. And the preparation for me is what has given me confidence. It's funny because people look at me and they think I'm, a confident person. I have learned confidence. It's actually one of the things I worked on with my coach, because my nature actually, and it's funny because when you have kids, you see yourself in your kids. I, by nature, growing up, I was a people pleaser. It was kind of funny because my siblings would always say, don't tell Dara, she's going to tell mommy and daddy because she wants to please everybody. I was always that kid, right? And it's like, it's so funny now because whenever my mom wants to get something, and we siblings have our little group chat, she'll call me. I'm like, don't call me. I'm not going to be the weak link. I'm not going to tell you.
I'm not going to tell you.
But, it's that I had to learn as an executive that, look, everyone's going to have an opinion on marketing. If I'm trying to please every single person, I'm not going to please our customers and I'm not going to deliver. I have to be willing to do what is right. And that was something I had to develop. But when you're prepared, it gives you confidence, right? When I've got my insights, it gives me confidence. So I would say to young women, be prepared and know you already have what it takes, right? There are a lot of half-baked people walking around looking for fully baked people. And the reality is we're all a little half-baked. It's true. And if you don't think you're half big, well, there you go. That's the half that's not big. You know, we're all a little bit like that. And the reality is that every single one of us, there is a first time someone gives us that opportunity to do something we haven't done before. And one of my greatest joys is giving a lot of people that first time opportunity. And I have been fortunate and blessed that someone has, like, now I've been a CMO. It's like, okay, Dara is a CMO, but someone took a bet on me and gave me that first CMO job. I think it's so important that we are willing to give other people a chance. And when we're prepared, we are able to meet those opportunities, and knowing that we are already have what it takes allows us to walk into those opportunities.
So the issue is confidence is critical. Double down on building confidence.
Yep.
Double down on building confidence, what you said. I remind my kids all the time too, it's like happiness is not a birthright. You have to work for it.
Yeah.
Confidence
you
is
strive
not
for it. When you get it, you got to hold on to it.
Absolutely. And confidence is not a given. It's never, there's maybe a few people out there who were maybe born with it. Let's assume most of us weren't. And you're right. We had to earn it based on our experiences. So go build confidence. I love that. Good lesson. Okay, Dara, I think that's all the time we have. I'm going to be respectful of that. I can't thank you enough for doing this. I can't thank you enough, too, for being really open about who you are and what you're trying to do in the world, because I think there's not enough of that goes around for people today. So I hope that for others out there, it's an inspirational lesson for them, and they learned something from this, and I sure did. So thank you. Thank you
So much. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thanks again to Dara Treseder from Autodesk for coming on Building Better CMOs. Now check the description of this episode for links to connect with Dara. And if you want to know more about MMA's work to unlock the power of marketing, please visit MMAglobal.com. Or you can attend any one of our 30 plus conferences in 15 countries where MMA operates, or really frankly, write me at greg@MMAglobal.com. Now thank you so much for listening. Tap the link in the show notes to leave us a review. And if you're new to the show, please follow or subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcast. You can find links to all those places and more at bettercmos.com. Our producer and podcast consultant is Eric Johnson from lightningpod.fm. Building Better CMO's researcher and program manager is Anita Polowska. Artwork is by Jason Chase, and a special thanks to LaSarah Smith for keeping the trains running. This is Greg Stewart. I'll see you in 2 weeks.